Okay. So before I call to order, I just want to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is unceded Mi'kmaq territory. We pay our respects to the indigenous Mi'kmaq people of this territory, past, present, and future. So I have declarations of conflict of interest. Any declarations of conflict of interest? See none. So on the agenda, we have under 4A, B, C, and D. And there is a closed agenda, but I'll just go with the open agenda right now. Move to approve. Moved by Councillor Ramsey, second by Councillor Yankup. All those in favor? Councillor Twill, yea or nay? Councillor Drawn, yea or nay?
In favor.
Okay, 10-0. Okay. Finance resolution, RFP award, sustainable procurement consultant.
That is per the request, moved by Councillor Cody and seconded by Councillor Twill. That is per the request for proposal on sustainable procurement consultant, the submission of Tim Reeve Consulting, Inc. in the amount of $38,000 plus applicable taxes be accepted, and that the city's contribution to these funds be expensed out of the 2022-23 budget.
Okay. Any questions? Question called? Yes. Questions called. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay. Councillor Drown, yea or nay?
In favor.
So that's 10-0. Done. Oh.
Moved by Councillor MacLeod and seconded by Councillor Duffy. That is per the conditions of the request for quotation on hourly backhoe hire rates, the submission of Lee McDonald Construction Limited in the amount of $58 an hour plus all applicable taxes be accepted.
Questions called? Should be an easy one. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Councillor Drawn, yea or nay?
In favor.
10-0. Oh.
Moved by Councillor MacLeod, seconded by Councillor Duffy, that the city agrees to cost share with the developer, Parker Perry, the installation of a piped storm water system to carry storm water from Palmer's Lane to McKay Drive, with the city share of the work costing $110,975, all taxes included, and that the city will enter into an easement agreement with the property owners for the installation of a storm system.
I have a question there, Mayor Brown.
Yes, Councillor Drawn.
Is that of the Palmer's Lane or the lower part down by Hillside? What property are we talking about?
I'm going to get Scott, Mr. Adams, to respond. Mr. Adams?
Your Worship, so this is the property. There's two properties in question. One that fronts on the Palmer's Lane and one fronts on the McKay Drive, and it's going through both of those properties. And it's right in behind the Chevrolet dealer, pretty close to the backside of the Chevrolet dealer is where it is.
Okay, Scott, that's already under construction there, is it not?
Yeah, so they have started some work. They're doing some site prep work there now, as far as I know.
Oh, okay, thank you. I wasn't sure if we were doing that one or the other end, but if it's that one, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Drawn. Councillor Twill? Yeah, so we're doing site work on one property or two properties?
In total, there are 3 properties that are impacted. We are only going to be covering expenses over 2 properties.
3 properties are impacted, but we're going to put infrastructure in on 2 properties, correct?
Correct. The third one, the developer's covering.
Okay. So the city's portion, practically $111,000, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Does that mean you'll be, this easement, and if need be, if there are repairs or maintenance that takes place, could take place next year for all we know, that means nothing will be built over the easement, correct?
Your worship, so anytime you enter into an easement agreement, the easement agreement is for both the protection of the city and the developer or the owner of the property, and it gets registered with the province. So if the current owner sells the lot, it's still legally binding. And what it protects, how it protects the city, it protects our infrastructure, so no one can build within that 30 feet. So usually, typically 15 feet either side of that pipe. Not supposed to plant any trees, anything like that that could impact our infrastructure. So that's how it protects us, and it protects the homeowner in the event that we have to go on and repair. It says that we are responsible for the reinstatement, repair to any damages that we may cause to private property.
My next question, Scott, is, okay, you're talking about putting infrastructure in over 2 properties. What about the infrastructure work done in Palmer's Lane and McKay Drive? What are we talking in terms of catch basins and other infrastructure that's required for this project to not only proceed but to be effective to handle all that storm water runoff, so it doesn't impact on the city's right of way or on other properties?
Your worship, so pre-existing to this, it was an open ditch, swale, whatever you want to call it, through that property. And all we're doing is we are infilling that, or the developer wants to infill it as it's their private property, and just direct the water through a pipe so that they can build adjacent to it and develop this land.
So, again, Scott, my question is, what are you looking at in terms of catch basins, both on Palmer's Lane and McKay Drive? How many? 1, 2, 3, 4? How many?
I believe there's one on either end. I'd have to double check the final plan, but essentially there's no, other than this area that we're working, there's no additional catch basins north or south on either street.
So you're not putting any catch basins in any of the streets?
No, not in any of the streets. Only. Exactly. Yeah.
To flow onto the streets, but that's right. But there's not going to be any new catch basins constructed on Palmer's Lane or McKay Drive. Is that correct?
Yeah. Just
Okay, I'm just trying to understand it.
good question. Scott, Mr. Adams, can you answer that?
Yeah. So as Councillor Bernard alluded to, exactly. It's just replacing what was there. It's not causing any additional issues. If anything, it is improving it because now we're not in. It's improving in terms of we can easier maintain it because it's on private property. That's the biggest challenge when private property. So
Yeah. Plus, it will allow for an additional property to be developed, correct?
Your worship, that's correct.
Yeah, which will increase the tax base. Okay.
Okay, my last question is,
Okay, is this the last is this an engineering question? Is that what you want to ask him?
it's relevant to
Okay.
the resolution.
Go ahead.
I don't know if I'm not an engineer.
No.
So, in terms of tendering process, has this gone to tender? And who won the tender?
So this is the developer undertaking the entire project. They had done the site work and design, they have hired, I believe it's Island Coastal, to do the work. I cannot say if they went to a public tender or not. This is not out of the ordinary, though. We have done this. I'm told that we've done this before. We have developer, we have the cost share, especially when it's our, we're flowing right away stormwater onto private property, and we have to try to help divert it and work with the property owners.
Okay. Scott, just quickly then, on Short Street, right, that we're going to be doing the work on Short Street, did we tender that or did we just work out something with Island Coastal Services?
So,
Just to give a comparative analysis.
Your worship, so for that one, it was tendered by the province last year, and they held their unit prices for this year.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're all right to go?
Well, just want to make it clear so the public knows, this is not our project. we're a partner. That's why it's not going to tender.
It's
That's
clearly
the
not our
difference. We're a
project.
partner.
Yeah.
And it's a good deal for us because it's our water that's going through private property. So
And it will allow for a piece of property that's not developed or not being developed, will be developed in the future. So there will be possibly another home for a family, could be a 2-unit, 3-unit apartment building, anything to help with the housing in the city. You're right. Okay. So, just another question on the engineering or on the,
On the resolution.
Okay.
So, once again, the city of Charlottetown is not required to go through the tendering process, even though we're partnering with a private developer. I'm just trying to understand the procedure and process, that's all.
Yeah.
So I can make an informed decision.
good.
So we're not required, and that's legal and binding, correct? Okay.
Mr. Adams will tell you that we will be working in collaboration with a developer that wants to take a piece of land that is not being used for anything, turn it into a piece of land that could be developed for a single family, maybe a duplex, again, adding to the housing supply for the city of Charlottetown. Correct, sir?
Your worship, that's correct.
Okay. Questions called? Okay, questions called. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Councilor Drawn, yea or nay?
Favor?
Yea or nay?
In favor.
Okay. Do you have another one?
Moved by Councillor McLeod and seconded by Councillor Duffy, that the city agrees to allocate $125,000 from the 2022-23 Public Works capital budget towards the replacement of the street lighting on Kent Street from Great George Street to Prince Street as part of the Kent Street revitalization project led by Discover Charlottetown.
Okay. Councillor Ramsey, question, please.
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. When this first was brought to us last year, I believe, the only cost was going to be to the city, and I sit on finance, and I heard the presentation the other day too, but the only cost was supposed to be as we change out the lights or the flags or whatever it is to the city. And now they're looking at an additional $125,000 from the city. And I really don't understand how it went off the board here from us just hiring a boom truck at certain times of the year and all that. And then all of a sudden, it looks like we're one of the major contributors. Thank you.
Donna, do you want to add any information to that?
Your Worship, as I understand it from what we were told the other day, when the engineers went in to look at, the lights now are coming from our street lights as such, instead of, in the first proposal, they were coming from the buildings. They're now coming from our street lights. When they went in to look at our old-fashioned street lights, the base of them, I think they said would not take the light that has to be up there in order to put the lights up, take the weight of them. So we're putting new bases in, the proposal is to put new bases for the street lights on Kent Street, which I think is, what we were also told is that was one of the first sections that we had the old-fashioned street lights. And that's been 20 years or so.
20 years plus?
20 years plus. Indeed, it has been 20 years. It may be more, it may be getting closer to 30, Your Worship. And that the integrity of those bases were impacted. And that's, so to put the new light standards up in bases that we might have to go back in 2 or 3 years and replace, or I don't know whether it's in a few years and replace, that didn't seem to make much sense. So thus and they are city infrastructure as well. That's the other. They are not Discover Charlottetown infrastructure. There was certainly a number of people at Finance Committee who had asked the same question that Councillor Ramsey did, but that was the explanation. And if I made any mistakes or incorrections, Mr. Adams, you could just chime in.
Your worship, Donna did a great job explaining it. Yes, so and what one other little piece I guess I will add, the original intention was always to keep the lights there. Our old fashioned was part of the original plan. But because they had to kind of go back to the drawing board with the fire department, we didn't want a whole bunch of infrastructure in the ground and a whole bunch of poles on top of our existing lights. And so it was recommended that let's incorporate those our city lights with this installation that they're doing, because also too they're trying to create a little bit more of a modern vibe on the street versus a historical vibe. So it was just a combination of things to upgrade this our existing light while still working with an idea with Discover Charlottetown.
Okay, Councillor Bernard?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just trying to understand this a little better, because I remember when this came through, they were going to attach the lights to the buildings. There was going to be cost sharing for electricity. There was going to be cost sharing for us to move the lights seasonally. Is that still the case, or is that changed?
Your Worship, so my understanding is so we would still be responsible for our street lights, the everyday lighting of the street for driving, for safety. The overhead structure lights would be still cost shared outside of the city, is my understanding, like the original proposal. And then the ongoing maintenance, because we're downsized in the overall footprint of the plan, there's significantly less maintenance. That combined with, at the time, the city did not have our own boom truck. So that's something that we could look at going forward once we understand the change out and we have staff that are trained to do that type of work. Is something that we could likely take in under our own operation. So it wouldn't be a hired out contractor as we originally intended. So that $50,000 that they say potentially could have been yearly, it should be much, much lower than that, even if we contracted it out. But then once our staff understand how to do the setup and have someone train them on it, it should be relatively inexpensive to the city for the ongoing maintenance.
So it's talking about $125,000. You want to move $100,000 from one budget over to this, and then find another $25,000 somewhere else. I'm okay with the project. My problem is, to be honest with you, is that it's not something that was talked about. It's not something that was budgeted. And I'm thinking there's a number of projects, because we're in the times where all our projects are going over budget. So here we're sliding $125,000 over to, there's nothing wrong with our lights, but the integrity is compromised if we add those other weight to go carry the lights across the street, which shouldn't really be our cost. I don't see, it doesn't say anything here about anything being cost shared. The electricity, when it was brought up before, my understanding is none of the retailers or the business owners want to pay anything towards the electricity. So I don't know if that's changed, but to be honest with you, I would prefer, like, for example, I'll give you a couple projects. Removing Hertz Hall away from St. Peter's Road. So we know how close it is. The windows get pounded in, the doors get pounded from snow. I believe you had some conversation with the province. They set aside $25,000. We've set aside $50,000, I believe, in our budget. Well, it's $90,000 just to move the building. So where's the money going to come from for a new foundation? The elevator for Hillsborough Community Center. I think there's $92,000 budgeted. Around 90, it's less than 100. But that's a $300,000 to $400,000 project. So what my concern is go ahead and do it. Just, I think we should put it in the capital budget in the upcoming year. Because I think we still have 6 months of our budget that, I don't want to see us going into the red for projects that the taxpayer expects to be done, when this can wait till the capital project is, when we do our capital budget. So that's my concern. So I would move that we just, if council agrees to do it, then do it into the next capital budget.
Councillor Bernard, this project has been on the books or on the.
It's been talked about, I understand that,
has been
and then it fell through.
Forwarded by Discover Charlottetown for the last year. They've been working with the Charlottetown Fire Services and also with other partners. I know ACOA is in on it. ACOA has 80 to 100,000 in this project. And Discover Charlottetown wants to see this go ahead. It looks like it can move forward, and that's why it's here tonight. I know about the other projects you're talking about, but those projects like Harrods Hall and with the elevator at Hillsborough Hall, their adjustments may be will require to be made, but there'll be some projects that we won't do this year because we're seeing that the prices are coming in too high. Correct, Scott?
And that's my point. That's exactly my point. You're going to give 125,000 here away of a project that, we talked about it, and then it went off the books.
Yeah.
And now it's back.
Yeah.
And I'd like to know, what is the cost sharing arrangement? How much is the city taxpayer paying versus our partners?
Yeah.
Because the last time I remember seeing it, it wasn't much more than 10%.
Yeah. No, I know with a co, it's 80 to 100,000. If I remember correctly from your presentation at the Public Works and Beautification Standing Committee meeting.
If I remember correctly, I think overall estimate's 296,000 for the project, and so the remaining funds are partner funding from other
So you're
areas.
saying this project is 300,000.
Yes, in total.
It's
Well, again, the last proposal was connecting to the existing buildings, which is just anchoring in, much simpler than having to put in all new concrete bases in the ground, all new poles, all new lights for the city infrastructure, on top of all the string lighting.
okay. Councillor Yankoff, could you add some light to the discussion?
Thank you. It was 100,000 from ACOA, 125 from the city, and 60 from innovation, and that's just for phase one. I wish that a full report had been provided for council to have read and reviewed, but it's not here, which I think we've talked about before, that it's really important for all of council to be able to read a full report to make an informed decision, because there's a lot of things missing here. And one is, yes, originally it was going to be just a $50,000 a year operation expense, but now we're being told it's going to be less because we own our own boom truck, but nobody can tell us how much less that is. So it's hard to vote on something when you don't know the exact amount. I tend to agree with Councillor Bernard that this is an incredible project. Discover Charlottetown is very innovative. They come up with brilliant ideas to market the city of Charlottetown, and they should be commended for it. I just think that this is better. We are better serving the residents of Charlottetown if we have all the information to make a proper informed decision about what phase two is going to look like too. And the bases, from what I understand, if you replace these antique lights and you're replacing these big cement black bases, which incidentally, I've been down the street almost every day, they're in good shape. So we're going to replace something that's in good shape, substantially larger, to be able to hold the lights up. And we've yet to hear from, whether or not that's going to affect snow plowing and moving if there's a much bigger base at the bottom of these lights. I just have a lot of questions, and I see this as an incredibly awesome project. I just think that we don't have enough information yet to make a proper informed decision. So I think that was the only other points that I had to make.
So do you agree with Councillor Bernard to put a
Yes.
motion on the floor to defer it?
Well, and, he used the example of the Hertz Hall. I could use the example. Last year, we pulled the antique lights from Lower Fitzroy Street, which was next on the list. And I'm always wondering about this worst first. And so we pulled the Fitzroy Street lights because it was too expensive. And so where are we at with that? I'm not saying that should happen this year either, if we don't have the money in our budget. I just think that I would like to see this project go ahead, but I would like to see it go ahead with all of the information before council in order to make an informed decision. So yes, I do support Councillor Bernard in looking at this in next year's budget.
Can I just go to the chair first? Chair,
Thank you very
McLeod?
much, Your Worship. Yeah, I kind of agree with Councillor Yankoff and Bernard. Snow removal is definitely going to become an issue. Like, if you drive down Kent Street now with the basis that we have, every half-ton truck is stuck out on the Kent Street. So if we're going to a bigger base, that's only going to make that problem more complicated. And not only that, this is only phase one of the project. So I know they want Queen Street, they want this part of Queen Street done at some point too. So where does the money come from that? So for me, if we're going to do this correctly, we need to sit down, gather all the facts, like Councilor Yankoff said, and then, since it's going to be a capital budget project, then we put in for all the street lights that we want to do to revitalize our lower downtown area. I just think that we're doing it in bits and tabs, and we're robbing Peter to pay Paul. If I have $100,000, I can tell you right now, as Public Works Chair, I'd be putting it into paving. So if there's any money, that's where I'd be putting it. So I would just think it's best to go back to capital budget time and bring in the other phases and do it all at once. Thank you.
Councillor McCabe.
Thank you. And I'm just kind of following up and piggybacking. So Scott, maybe it's a question for the manager. Are these streetlights in need of repair right now, or is it that you're recommending because of the project that you would do it at the same time?
Your worship, so the lights are still functioning, but they are aging. They would be, because we do typically have money in our budget for LED conversion, which is where some of these funds would come from. So we have $100,000 in our budget. One is for new LED installs and one is for LED conversions. So this falls on both of those categories. So there was $100,000, 25 we would try to locate elsewhere in the budget. So again, this infrastructure is aging. They are still operational. The challenge, and we see this elsewhere too, where because of the age of some of this underground wiring, if we get a break in the middle of the winter, we're going to be without lights because it is challenging to find where that wire may be severed and such. And we thought as well, since this project was ongoing, let's combine the work. Nothing worse than a project being done on the street. It gets beautified again, and then someone else comes in and does more damage to the street. I think it will be a more cohesive look because the lighting will be integrated with the existing poles. We're trying to minimize the number of poles and infrastructure, and I see a lot of questions around the table about the bases and the poles. From a winter standpoint, this is actually a better option than what was originally, or than if we would just leave our existing lights and then Discover Charlottetown did their thing, because then that would add more poles around, which is not ideal. So the bases, most people are concerned about the size of the base. The bulk of the size increase is below ground. You don't even see them, and actually all concrete will be flush with the asphalt. Right now the existing ones stick up. It'll be flush mounted, and then that's where our pole would be. And then we also, any new lights we strategically place. So because it's angled parking, as anyone knows, when you pull into a spot, your right side of the vehicle pulls up against the sidewalk, but your left side of the vehicle is pulled away from the sidewalk. So we strategically go out and mark out the exact spot that they're to put the bases so that it fits in that spot. So it fits in when you're angled. It's sitting right there on the left side of your of the vehicle, and so you butt up right against it, and so you don't have these half tons sticking out. That's what we did on Queen Street. So we try to be more strategic versus what had happened previously.
So just want to follow up. So that's great. So for clarification, the money that we would allot for LED replacement lighting, and this would take all that money for this one street to coordinate the project. So places that maybe were in the works or were still in progress in other areas would not happen this year, because this would then take all the money in our budget.
That's correct. We hadn't earmarked anything for any project for that money at the budget time. We typically leave it. We put it in our budget because we do have sometimes some repairs or replacement of LED heads that have to be replaced, and those funds would come from that. But some years that's the funds that we've done for these projects. I think of Northridge Parkway. That's where we took these funds from. These two accounts can be used in a couple different options.
Thank you.
Councillor MacLeod.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Sorry to disagree with the manager of Public Works, but one project, for example, I know Councilor Bernard gave a couple of samples, but this one covers probably 3 wards, if not 4. St. Peter's Road light replacement. I mean, we've got emails from the fire and police that the road is derelict. It's safety issues on crosswalks, and you're telling me that there's no other projects ever in the hopper. This has been an ongoing issue for a long time. But getting back to my original, the base is probably important, but my main beef with this project is the fact that there's more to come, right? And we might as well get out in front of it and get all the money to do the lanterns that need to be placed to put more lighting up on other revitalization projects. Thank you.
So let's go back to Councillor Bernard has suggested, wants to defer. It's going to be seconded by Councillor Yankoff, correct? Okay. Want to put that, you want to defer it?
Yeah, I just want to make a
Okay,
point though.
so let's just put a motion on the floor. Move to defer.
First of all, Your Worship, my point in bringing up a couple of projects, that was an example.
Yeah.
We're hearing some other examples. So, yeah, I would move that
Move
we
to defer. Seconded by Councillor Yankoff.
defer this to
Yay.
the capital budget.
To defer it. Get more information.
Defer it to the capital budget, it would be,
Defer it until capital budget 2023, 2024? Oh, I thought we were just looking at, you wanted more information and the backgrounder. That's what I was thinking you were saying. Okay, well, that's what you're saying.
Well, we don't really have a background, or we don't have a report. I learned more tonight from Mr. Adams than I did at the Public Works meeting, and thank you very much, Mr. Adams, for that. But that probably should have been in a report for us to better understand. I mean, Councillor Twill, I think, had his hand up for
Yeah,
questions as well.
but
so-
I have the backgrounder here from the Public Works Committee, and it's basically the same report that we have tonight. But we were given that information about the $100,000 from ACOA and innovation at our meeting. So we got a resolution on the floor.
why don't you do this then, if you, because there's a lot of stuff come up tonight I didn't know. I didn't know it was a phase 2 or phase 3.
Yeah.
There's a total cost, and so why don't we at least defer till
Yeah.
further information, we can make a decision whether we want to go to capital.
Moved by Councillor Bernard, second by Councillor Yankoff. The resolution on the floor is to defer it. So Councillor Twill, you want to speak to the deferral? Correct? Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah. Councillor Twill, you want to speak to the deferral? You have to press your mic on.
You said phase one. Who said phase one? Where'd that come from?
Put your mic on.
Okay, phase one. So a new discovery here tonight. There's other phases. So there's phase 2? Is there a phase 3 too?
There's at least one more.
One more. So currently, phase 1 is $300,000. What's the cost of phase 2?
We don't know yet.
No. Okay, so how can you bring forward a resolution that impacts on future expenditures for the city to say, well, that was only phase 1, that's $300,000. We don't know what the cost of phase 2. We don't know who the funding partners are. Like, how do you do business like that?
No, we do know the funding partners.
Pardon me?
ACOA, did you hear? ACOA.
ACOA?
It's 100,000. Mr. Adams, 100,000 from ACOA?
It was 110,000.
110. Innovation, what was innovation, Prince Edward Island?
60,000.
60. Then the city's contribution, that was phase 1.
125,000.
Yeah, so as for phase 2, they didn't get into. So your question is on the deferral. Are you in support of the deferral or not? Do you want to speak to the deferral?
I want to speak to the lack of information. There's nothing in here that says we're getting money from ACOA.
No.
There's nothing in here that says
That's why we're
we're getting money
deferring it.
from innovation.
Yeah, that's why we're deferring it, to get more information. That's what's in the resolution. And come back with a recommendation. Okay?
So does that mean phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, the total cost?
No, we'll just be looking
No?
at phase 1.
Phase 1. So we're not going to know what phase 2's,
Well-
what that includes.
We were told that phase 2 was $100,000.
And if we can get that information, more information, we'll provide that in the backgrounder. Okay? Okay.
And the deferral's based on,
Do you want to repeat, Donna, can you repeat the deferral? You have to turn off your mic so you can hear it.
Moved by Councillor Bernard and seconded by Councillor Yankov, that the resolution for the beautification of Kent Street be deferred for further information.
Good.
Did Councillor Lana say that she wanted to defer till the next year's capital
No.
project?
Yeah.
Was I wrong on that?
You're correct, and then I did it first, and then we thought, well, since we all still have so many questions, we thought step one is let's defer it to get all the information. Then we can make the decision on whether or not, I mean, we're not really in discussions about next year's capital budget right now, so it's hard to put, Chair of Finance on the spot about things like that. So, but we could at least get the additional information to be better informed.
And it will be part of the background report. And Donna, does that have to go back to finance, or can we just come right back to council? You have to go through the,
Public Works will probably funnel it through. The money is, the resolution is here from finance. We can make it, use that resolution. But Public Works will be getting the information together.
okay, Councillor McLeod, you're all right to take that on? Question.
So what, with this new resolution, once that information comes back, we will have to make a decision whether they want to go to the new capital, to next year's capital budget or not at that point.
That could be part of the discussion. That could be, yeah.
Okay.
Questions called? All those in favor to defer this resolution, please raise your hands.
I do have one
Yep.
question.
Yea or nay?
Well, no, I'll tell you why. Should we not deal with the resolution that's here first?
No, but you're deferring it.
We're just going to defer.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's, yeah, you're just
Thank you.
deferring the resolution that's on the floor. Councillor Duran, yea or nay?
In favor.
Okay, 10-0. Okay, now just one second. Where are we at with our agenda?
Scott, just while I have you here, has any engineering tenders or anything went out for Harts Hall or the elevator?
So, Your Worship, so we're finishing up the RFP for engineering services. I hope to get that out this week or up to finance at least. So that's the first step.
That's for the hall or?
That's for the hall and
Harts Hall?
and the relocation. They're both in development right now, both RFPs for the Hertz Hall and Hillsborough Hall.
Okay.
So hoping to get them out this week up to finance. That's our goal.
Thank you.
And Scott, just before you go, it's something that we did bring up. It's about the street access bylaw. I know that the deputy was getting calls today about a development out in Ward 8. We're going to follow up on that, what we discussed at the Public Works and Beautification Standing Committee meeting.
Your Worship, I believe that there is a protective services meeting this week, if I'm not mistaken. And I believe that is on the agenda for that meeting, as the current bylaw is assigned to the police department.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, Mr. Adams, thank you very
Just,
much.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And Scott, as a follow-up, I sent an email on Friday regarding the removal of the sidewalks in Alley Street. You please respond to that. I got residents that are questioning me about whole section of sidewalks being removed.
Well, thank you. Nancy McCray, our acting manager of finance, Steve Wedlock, our controller, and Mr. Steve McFadgen. So the item is for, are you staying, Mr. Adams, also? Good. Is the Enterprise Fleet Management. So it's an information report. It's in your package.
Another go around at the Enterprise Fleet Management. This is the seventh time we've dealt with this.
Oh, it's been discussed. Okay, just one second. Donnie, do you want to give a backgrounder, or do you want to leave it to Nancy and team?
I'll do the top level, Your Worship, and then Finance Committee considered this report at its latest meeting. You will recall a month ago, you asked us to put, when Mr. Hooley was at the meeting, you asked us to create one complete report. Mr. Hooley also advised at the time he thought we should go through the process again, no matter what your decision is. So what I asked Nancy and Stephen to do is to pull it all together, do a report, make a recommendation. They did that. You have that in front of you. This is and it went to Finance Committee 2 to 3 weeks ago. And Finance Committee looked at it and said, it's not fair that other councillors don't there's too much information here. We need the councillors to have the time to look at the report. I think we sent it out within a day or two of the Finance Committee so that you would have time to mull it over, think about it. It's back here today for information purposes only, because it is going, if you have a question, we have the staff here, they can answer the question. And it will go back to Finance. Finance will consider your input, or will consider the report, make a recommendation to council for the July 11th meeting.
Nancy, do you wish to give any opening statement, Steve or Mr. Adams?
Just one question before they start.
Yeah. Can I just find out do you want to say anything?
Yeah, I just want to say that Stephen, they have compiled this report based on all the information we have received to date. It's an objective report. It is, we felt that the information that the Finance Committee and Council had previously had was somewhat fragmented. So we just put it all together as if this was your first time ever seeing the proposal. So that was kind of the mindset in the preparation of this report.
Good. Okay. Councillor Tweel is first, and then Councillor Bernard. Councillor Tweel, you want to ask the question to who?
Yeah. Over the weekend, I sent an email out to all members of City Council requesting for the industry to have the opportunity to meet with council, considering this report. You heard Manager of Finance stated pretty clearly that previous reports were fragmented. So, we're making decisions on reports that really weren't really cohesive. They weren't airtight, and no disrespect to anyone involved in the process, but that's coming from your Manager of Finance. We have a large industry in this community and in this province that they're very, very concerned about an unsolicited bid whereas this industry was not consulted and didn't have the opportunity to collaborate from the beginning. I'm not sure how this all began. I'm not sure who initiated the unsolicited bid, whether it came locally or whether it came from Toronto or who's involved from Toronto. I have no idea. I know there was a presentation back a number of months ago. I think it was done by virtually. I forget the gentlemen that were involved. I don't remember their names. But I think if you're going to embark upon a process or any type of procedure, the industry needs to be involved from the outset. They need to be involved from the beginning. I think it's only fair. It's great, we got this revised report in front of council. There's a lot of questions from the industry. But with all due respect, I think it's only fair. I mean, this industry represents a good portion of our population, the contribution that they make to the community in terms of charities, the taxes that they pay, people that they employ. They're a major player in the economics of this city, and I'm not sure why. I'm not sure if there's a resistance or hesitation or whatever the case may be, but I would think we would welcome the opportunity to sit down with the industry as well and have that discussion with the industry. They have an organization. They have an executive director, president. And why not sit down and have a good dialogue with them and a good discussion? And that way, when all the information is aired and aired effectively, equally and fairly, then council can vote whatever way it wants to vote. But I think, right now, the major component missing here is the industry. And with all due respect, I'll reiterate, it was an unsolicited bid. They were not involved at the outset. I think that's wrong. I mean, we do follow the principles and procedures and philosophy of the procurement agreements. At least that's what we've done in my time here at City Hall. And I don't know why we're not sitting down with the industry as well. We have staff here, bring in the industry. I mean, this chamber is too small for that. I would suggest we go out to the Raj Royalty Inn, nice big room, bring in the industry, bring in our staff, and have a good discussion, a thorough discussion.
Okay.
So, Mr. Mayor, I did
Just
send
sum it up.
that email out
Yeah.
over the weekend.
Yeah.
And with all due respect, I would like to move it to deferral.
No.
So that we have the industry directly involved with the discussions with this new report that I believe is much more cohesive.
Okay. So Councillor Twill.
I put a motion on the floor for
Yeah, no, you've moved it. You've moved it. No, he suggested, but Councillor Twill, we had the Prince Edward Island Automobile Dealers Association into this chamber. And to say that this is what you did in the past, that you find it completely different, I think this council has been very open and transparent. And I think that it's a disservice to not only the council, but the staff that work hard every day to provide all this information. And they're being upfront with it. And I respect what they're doing. And today, we honored a lot of those staff for their 5-year, 10-year, 15-year, 20-year, 35-year service. So again, I take exception to those words, but I do say this, I will say this, is that we have a report here tonight just for information. And then it will follow the process. It will go back to the Standing Committee for Finance and Properties. We have received the emails. I've spoken to the Executive Director for the Prince Edward Island Automobile Dealers Association. She's kept all of us quite informed. And her email that she sent out on Friday afternoon detailed some of the questions she had that she raised about the recommendation from the Finance Department. And I have the highest respect for the diligence that our department, our staff do every day to make this city the best place to live, work, and play. So we are following the process. The process is being advocate, or well, I can say this much. Our interim CAO has taken the advice, has spoken to her legal counsel. Process will be followed this time around. Councillor Bernard. Councillor Bernard. No.
Comments.
No. Councillor Bernard.
Okay, I'll respond.
Yeah, just turn off your mic too, please.
Yeah.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to, basically, I disagree with Councillor Twill. I think, first of all, I guess as far as the industry is concerned, I know Mr. McFadden, I believe, and maybe Mr. Wetlock, I know they have met with industry. Now, you're right, industry was in this chamber, but then after that, Mr. McFadden, as the fleet manager, had met with the industry of any questions they had. And my understanding is, correct me if I'm wrong, but they've never come back with any other queries after that meeting. So, and I think the information in the package here, I believe it was all presented to us at one time. I think this is the 8th time we're dealing with this. It may be put together very nicely tonight, but all of this information had been presented to us before. And I think for me, Councillor, I know when I chaired finance in the last few years, there's been nobody bidding on these vehicles. We had 13 vehicles that went up for tender year previous, and we had one bidder, and that was Summerside Chrysler Dodge. And I remember the big conversation here is, how can we give it to someone in the city of Charlottetown? But they were the only ones that bid. That was 13 vehicles. And to me, when I look at this, my responsibility is to the taxpayer, the one that voted us in office to manage the money. So, when I go through this, do I see it hurting any local dealerships? No, I don't. As a matter of fact, now that I have some information on the last 18 vehicles we just purchased that all come through Fairall Ford, and they've got according to this, they charged $500 per vehicle to bring it in, which in the past, they were always, one was always undercutting another dealer. So this way here, Fairall Ford, and like someone to tell me the last time Fairall Ford had 16 or 18 vehicles, Because I know the last 5 years, there hasn't been very many local dealers bidding on our city vehicles. So to me, all along, this package works great for the taxpayer, works great for the city, and works good for the local dealers. So, and I'm glad that we have everyone here to go through the package. We can go through it page by page and answer any questions, but this has been good for the city, and we already know of the vehicles that we ordered, and the breakdown is in your package here, that the taxpayer is saving $261,000 from what we would have paid in the past. And I look at that and say, you know what, that's real good savings that we just started with our first tender. Enterprise fleet management, and I think there's been a lot of misinformation put out there, and everybody thinks that we're leasing these vehicles. This is a corporate capital lease program. This is not like, you pay for nicks and dents and how much miles you use. We own the vehicles. We pay for them through a lease payment. We own the vehicles. We own the equity. I don't see anything here that's not positive for the taxpayer. But anyway, I'll let staff go through. But we've had this information
Yeah, thank you.
multiple times.
Councillor Ramsey? Councillor Priel, you have to turn off your mic because that interrupts the other speakers.
No, I know, I was wanting to speak and I wanted to counter what you were saying.
Yeah, no, you know what, there are speakers in the lineup to
I
speak
know,
to
I
this
did press my
resolution.
button.
So just turn off your mic so that we can listen to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Stephen and Stephen. Two Steves. And I think it's a great deal too also. At the same time, how come Charlottetown is the only city or village or town that's onto this program? Like that was a question that someone was asked the last time. If it's, and it seems with all your figures that it is working out well and it's saving the taxpayers $230,000, as Councillor Bernard said. But at the same time, why is not these other communities not jumping aboard if it's, is there something off that we're missing? Like, this is my own personal opinion. I'm just wondering, like, how come Moncton's not aboard, or Summerside's not aboard, or Alberta, or Calgary, or anything along that line? That's all I'm wondering. That's stuck in my mind.
Since Charlottetown has placed an order in Grand Falls, and Newfoundland, this side of it.
Steve, can you just, Nancy, could you turn on the mic and then Steve, just so that it's live stream and that will be audible?
So
Thank you.
There are communities out west that have them in Alberta and Ontario. There is one that's signed on, I believe it's Grand Falls. I'd have to look that up. I can look that up if you want to confirm it. I mean, a lot of other municipalities have massive fleet departments. I mean, you're looking at your fleet department. I think that I can't really answer why other municipalities aren't doing it. I mean, all the information I have is that this is a good deal for both the dealers and for the city. I mean, we feel that that's our responsibility, is when opportunities like that come forward, is to bring it to you guys to make decisions.
I can say that Moncton's looking at it now.
Councillor Ramsey?
Well, thank you for that. Like, that was just a thought that was always stuck in my head there. Like, we're all about trying to save the taxpayers $1 here and $1 there wherever we can. And I thank you for that answer. And so it was something I always wondered, like, how come everybody's not saying, oh, this is such a great deal, we're all on board with it. Okay, thank you very much.
I do have, Councillor Trump, your mic's on. Do you want to, can I, there's a lineup. There's Councillor Rivard, Councillor Yankoff, and then yourself. Councillor Rivard.
I thought you wanted Councillor Duffy to speak. I was going to wait my turn. Thank you, Your Worship. So again, Donna did mention earlier that, again, we're starting the process over. That was the recommendation from Mr. Hooley. So I think we got to be careful on, again, it's not apples and apples, because there's a lot of information, a lot of stuff that was shared in the past. You're right, Councillor Bernard, there was, I think, 7 or 8 meetings. But again, if you start the process over, you literally have to start the process over, to be fair. So I guess that's where we're now. So we can't be comparing too much to the stuff that we had in the past. And the meeting's only because David Hooley's directed us to go this way. So I think we got to be a little bit careful on that. That's all, on comparing information. And the second point, Your Worship, we did receive an email from the association. There's a number of bullets, basically questioning or challenging, if you will, a lot of the points that were in the report. So I think it would be really good to kind of go through the report and ask the questions that the association has asked, and maybe offer some more clarity to everybody in the room, just to say, are we missing something? We've got to make a good decision here. We have an opportunity to do that. And so I think we should go through each item, each bullet, ask the question that the association is asking, and get an answer, and then that'll probably offer the most clarity for council that we can possibly get.
So, Councillor Rivera, do you suggest that we do that at the Standing Committee for Finance and Properties, or do we do it here as a council of the whole?
I don't care. Whatever way we do it, Your Worship. I mean, if we do it here tonight, it is going to take a couple hours probably to go through. I don't think anyone really wants to be here a couple hours when it's plus 30 outside. If it is something that's better to be asked at the committee level, then great. Whatever council thinks is best.
Okay, so Donna, as interim CAO, then we'll discuss that with the Chair of Finance and take those suggestions as part of the committee meeting that will be forwarded. This report will be forwarded back to your committee. Correct?
Yes, Your Worship. Unfortunately, I was not able to open the email over the weekend. I just got it opened here now, and I think and I didn't forward it on to staff, therefore I did not forward it on to staff. So yes, we can make an attempt to answer all the questions and provide it to the Finance Committee, and you'll see the answers in the minutes of the Finance Committee at that time.
Sorry, Your Worship. Yeah, and when we do that, can we make sure that we have, again, so we have the report that was initially done. We do have the report with some comments from the association. If we can continue on with that same report with clarification from staff in maybe blue or whatever the color may be, just to say that we have a sequence, that would be amazing.
So Donna, you'll forward that on to Nancy and gang?
I'm forwarding as we speak.
And I'm not sure if all council received it, but I didn't receive any emails with any questions, so I would love to know what the questions were, that are going to be answered, so a person could be privy.
It did go to council.
Not this one.
Yeah. Oh. No, Mike, Councillors Duffy and Rams, you're on the committee.
It was the Mayor, Councillor Cody, Councillor Rivard, Councillor Yankov, and Councillor Tweel who received it.
My apologies. I thought it will be forwarded. Lisa Doyle McBain, who is the Executive Director of the Prince Edward Island Automobile Dealers Association. Councillor Yankov.
I was really just going to speak to the 13 points that we have in the report from staff, because there were 13 then points that came from the Automobile Association looking for clarification. For example, and we won't go through them all now because we are now going to do that at the committee level, but the first three alone, they said that regardless of what you do, that process will occur. When it came to maintenance costs of age of overall fleet will be reduced, therefore less maintenance required. According to their information, those three things will occur whether you go with local dealerships or through fleet management. So there was just, every single one of them had their point, so it would be really good for us to have the clarification of the 13 comments and points from the Automobile Association. So.
Good point.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy, do you want to add anything to it? Could I also ask that obviously it'll be going to the Standing Committee for Finance and Properties, and if council members do want to be part of the meeting, it's open to them. They may not be part of the discussion because they're not voting members or standing members of the committee, but please think about that. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, no, anyone can go to the meetings. I believe it started at Public Works. That's where this whole thing started, however many years ago now, I guess. So, yeah, that's fine. Yeah. And it's great we're going to go through the recommendation. I'm just wondering if we know how much we're paying Enterprise to realize these savings when we could just go through the open tender process ourselves. So what are we paying Enterprise to do this?
In the package there, it shows their in the package there it shows their markup.
Yep.
That goes to them, and then the maintenance side of it, we're doing a maintenance management agreement with them, which basically they track all of our data, gas consumption, repairs. They keep an eye on the market, and that costs $10 per truck per month. Is the fees that they get from us.
Okay, so do we have a total of what we're looking at to pay? To me, when you look at this report and you look at some of the bullets, we could do this ourselves in-house. All council has to do, if we want to turn the vehicles over and reduce maintenance and have better fuel efficiency, all council has to do is say, every 12 to 18 months or when the vehicle hits 30 or 40K, trade it in and get a new one. And that will reduce our maintenance costs ourselves without going out and paying Enterprise to do that. I think we can probably do that in-house. That's one of my concerns on why we wouldn't just do that.
They have a much broader market for resale. They understand where the market's at. That's their expertise. It's definitely not our expertise for the car market. So that's where the benefit of them is that they know the best time to turn over these trucks. They are constantly monitoring that market, where that's not something that we have access to.
But the local dealerships have the same access to that market that Enterprise would. So, like I say, if the bullets here are to say that we're going to save money on maintenance and fuel, the 10 people in this chamber can just stipulate what the parameters are going to be, so we don't have a vehicle that's 10 years old and we're sinking money into and it's not as efficient as say a new one. So we have the control in this room to make that work. And I guess I don't understand why we wouldn't use the expertise here as opposed to paying another firm to do that for us.
I don't think that we would have the equity either, though, Jason. We're doing it, we're buying it
Just,
ourselves.
Councilor Bernard, just one second. Steve, do you have an answer?
Yeah, we don't have the internal expertise on the fleet market within Canada and within North America that Enterprise does. We could say every 18 months you get a new truck. It's good. It absolutely will lower our costs. Will it be a benefit to the taxpayer? I don't know. I think that's the advantage of this, is that the market expertise that they do bring to it to be able to advise us. They're advising us. We don't necessarily have to get rid of the truck at their time that they advise us. They can say, this is when you're going to have the best equity into that vehicle. But again, that's, like I said before, our job is to bring you guys the information, and then we act accordingly based on what you guys recommend for us.
And I appreciate that. And I guess all I'm saying is we have the control over what parameters we want to set, right? And I want to know what it's costing for Enterprise to do, this deal for us. Basically, we have $10 a month. We got the markup fee. We got the maintenance schedule. I'd like to know what it costs. And maybe you can get that. That's fine.
That's actually listed in the.
Yeah, but I want to see how much it is. I know you have one example here of one purchase. So can I take that and times it by like 19 vehicles, or there has to be some sort of cost associated with this deal? Enterprise is just not doing it out of the goodness of their heart. But just on that, so on the page before that, where the Appendix A, when it says, and pick whatever example you want, just the dealership price on a new truck was, say, $66,000. Enterprise was $48,000, and gives you the difference. Was that just purchasing one vehicle from the dealership as opposed to Enterprise going out and purchasing 19 vehicles? Is that how they got that bulk purchase price, as opposed to us just going out and getting one? Like, where did you get those numbers from?
So those are when we tendered for 13 vehicles in 2021. That is actually what we paid for those 13 vehicles. So this time we went for 18, and that's the dollar we got. The difference with the two numbers is that we actually see the invoice cost of what it actually is costing Ford Canada to build that truck. And then you clearly see Enterprise's markup. You clearly see the dealership markup, which I think is a really transparent process.
Okay, and are we comparing, because I know we talked before about, if you got a Dodge truck and then you got a Ford truck, are we comparing the same models of trucks on these prices on this example here?
Yeah, they basically provide us all the available units, and they do a per kilometer cost analysis of what it would cost us to own the vehicle over a couple year period or 3-year period. And they look at Ford, they look at Dodge, they look at GM, and they bring that back to us, and we look at based on, okay, this is the best value today if we're needing vehicles, so this is the make and model we're going with. They're all given those same options.
Okay, and I'll try and wrap it up here, Your Worship. I know other people have a couple of questions, but I'm just wondering if, and I asked this at Finance, I'm just trying to wrap my head around the equity owned portion of this deal versus like the equity leased portion on that little spreadsheet that you provided. I still just, for some reason, can't wrap my head around how that works with the owned and the leased equity in these vehicles. It's Appendix C.
Turn on your mic there, Nancy. These are questions that you can take down and bring forth at the Standing Committee for Finance and Properties if you don't have the answers right now. I know we're putting you on the... Are you all right to answer?
Stephen can address the equity.
Okay.
Okay, I guess I'll ask first that everyone open to the spreadsheet so they can follow along while I'll just walk you through it, essentially what it's telling us. So I guess at the top, you'll see the assumptions that were made when this analysis was prepared. And this was done back, I think, in the fall of 2020 or in the spring of 2021. So it was fairly early on in the process. So this, at this point, is somewhat aged, but still relevant to the scenario that we're proposing. So the assumptions at the top is that we have a current fleet of 61. Current cycle, which is the turnover of each vehicle, averages approximately 13 years. And our current maintenance cost per vehicle is about $150. And so that works out to about 13 cents a kilometer on our current fleet that we totally own at this point. So the proposal that the analysis that Enterprise came back with, they propose maintaining the fleet of 61. Only we're going to be reducing our holding period to about 2.5 years approximately, which gives us the best result at the end of the day as far as cost savings. And the proposed maintenance, because of the newer type of vehicles, is going to go down. They expect it to be around $56. So we start with those assumptions, and in year one, which was 2020, the year that I provided the information for, which was, I think, approximately 3 years of fuel and maintenance costs, and what we currently had in our fleet across the board. And that included both utility and the city and Parks and Rec. So in the first fiscal year they looked at our current fleet. So this is the line you'll see where it says average. So we have a fleet size of 61. Annual needs, they approximate it to be around 5 vehicles a year, which is what, on average, we have been purchasing. So currently on the first line, we own the 61 vehicles. We are leasing none. So this is the base year they're starting at, which is where they start and base all their cost savings from there on. So currently to purchase those approximately 5 vehicles a year would have cost us $160,000 in the past. And at the end of the life cycle, which was our holding period of approximately 13 years, we may get around $9,600 back out of those vehicles when we trade them in on the purchase of a new one. The maintenance costs for those vehicles approximately per year was about $110,000. And so the overall fleet cost, you'll see those three amounts will add up to $258,000 for a base year. In any particular year, that's what the city was spending on average to maintain their fleet in its current state. So as you'll see, we roll through the subsequent years. They've done this up to 2030. So we start in the year 2021, and we still have a fleet size of 61. We are now potentially looking at purchasing 29 vehicles in this particular scenario. So we buy 29 new ones, we maintain the 32 that we already own. Therefore, we'll be leasing 29, holding 32, which still leaves us with a fleet of 61. So our lease costs for those 29 vehicles for that particular year would be approximately 190,000 and change. At the end of the turnover for those, which would be approximately 2.5 years, as I stated in the assumptions, we would have a return of equity of approximately $168,000. Or no, sorry, the 29 we dispose of would have a recovery of 168,490 coming back in for us to respend.
Steve, just where are you? I'm at 2022. I'm over the annual savings. Are you?
Yeah, so the equity owned is the
Okay.
equity that we have
Yeah,
in our
got it.
own vehicles that we've previously bought and maintained. The equity leased is the equity that we have in the leased vehicles, the 29 that we're buying. So we've included the maintenance costs, which would be a significant reduction there of about 77,000 as opposed to 109 in a normal year. So overall, netting out the equity, the return of the equity from the owned vehicles and whatnot, our fleet cost for that particular year would be about $23,000, netting out all our equity recoveries and reinvestment. So under the annual savings, you will see in year one, which was our base year, we had a $258 cost. In year 2021, we have a cost of $23,000. So you're going to see a savings in that particular year of approximately $235,000. It's going to, yes. So, and as you move down that table on the right-hand side, that shows you the total savings per year as compared to the base year of 258. So essentially the number, the 235,844 would be the 258, which is our base year, minus the 22,935. That's our cost savings for that year. So as you move down, if you take the 258 and take off the 68, you end up with a savings of 190. So you're always going back to that base year of 258 when you're comparing these subsequent years. That's how that calculation works. So these, over that 10-year period up to 2030, the cumulative savings we would realize, rolling all into the leasing program, would be approximately 1.5 million. And yes, I was just going to mention that in the previous analysis you've seen that came from Enterprise, we had fuel in here. Given that fuel is such a volatile market right now, we decided to exclude it from here and just do our net cost savings based on a normal program, excluding the volatility of the fuel market. So I'll stop there. Any questions on what I went through? Or
Just want to finish up with the deputy.
Yeah, I'll finish up and thank you. So if you go to the next year down, it looks like we're going to have 35 leased vehicles at $237,000. So are we saying the equity in those vehicles is going to be $170,000 after 2.5 years?
Yes, that's what the analysis shows. So when we roll those over, we're going to get that money back to reinvest into the new fleet.
So after driving a vehicle for 2.5 years, it's only going to depreciate $77,000 out of 35 vehicles?
That's what the analysis presented says. And when you look at your, there's another spreadsheet in there that shows the analysis of the single vehicle. That sort of shows how it rolls through the system. And I'm just going to touch back on Jason's point there of why it's more advantageous to do this through Enterprise than it would be to do it in the local market. The biggest advantage is that we will recover a lot more equity because we're not putting such a high investment in upfront, and we're also getting more for our trade-in at the back end.
But when you
our trade-ins historically have been significantly low, and I realize that has to do with the age of the vehicle at the time, but I don't think we're going to be able to access the markets or the pricing that will allow us to realize these savings without using Enterprise, and trying to do that locally. I don't think we'll realize the same cost savings.
Yeah, and I go back to my previous comment that the local dealerships would have access to the same markets that Enterprise would.
They do not, as far as I'm aware.
They don't have the same access?
No, not to this particular market, because this is what Enterprise specializes in. They specialize in rolling these vehicles over. They have a national and even an international market in the States that they have access to for pricing, and they will recover the best equity they can get out of our vehicle.
And I'm not disagreeing when you say they specialize in that, but I think the car dealerships would specialize in selling and buying and moving vehicles. That's their business.
Yes, but I think their market would be somewhat limited compared to Enterprise's nationwide access. And I would think their access would be more prompt. It wouldn't be a phone call type thing. They have a whole department that manages resale of these vehicles on their behalf. They have specialists that work in this market exclusively.
Okay. Councillor Duffy, Councillor Vard, Councillor Yankoff. Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be brief. First of all, I'd like to go back to the first paragraph. There's been some question or curiosity in regards to why is Charlottetown the only one in the Maritime Provinces, and why are we first and nobody else is involved in it? Right off the bat, first of all, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, a fairly reputable organization. They are the people that carried out this search for car dealerships, fleet management, that are into fleet management. I think there were 7 or 8 that applied, but in the overall competition, the Enterprise Fleet Management Organization won the contract, and that was back on June the 7th of 2018. 4 years ago. Well, when you get a national contract like this, you just don't set it up, this Saturday and have it operating by Wednesday. I mean, it takes a lot of work of organizational, of putting in place to get it going. And so they approached us, I think it was in 2020 or 2021, in November of 2020. So it was a mere, a year and a half later, they were in business, and they had, for whatever reason, but somebody's got to be first, so I guess we were first. So I don't know what importance it is, what they were doing at that time, but I'm sure with the backing of the Canadian Federation of Municipalities, I'm sure they come well heeled in that area. And just 1 or 2 other points. You learned from Steve Wedlock recently that one of our half-ton trucks or vehicles we had it for 12 years. Every total for a half-ton truck. So let's face it, somewhere along the line, that truck had to turn from being an asset into a liability long before 12 years. So we've been driving it and taking a hit with it for maybe 5 or 6 years when we should have, if we were smart and had programs and that sort of thing like fleet management, Enterprise Fleet Management. They nab it when it's starting to turn or go south or turn sour and get rid of it quickly, rather than taking it for another 7 years. And we've all gone to university with our $800 clunkers. You know what happens? The first ball bearing goes and then everything else goes after that. It's an endless tragedy to have an $800 wonder. So with this organization, this will eliminate all that money that was actually lost for the 7 or 8 years. I think one other thing that we're kind of missing is, there's people questioning, and that's good that people question the information we've been given. But we're losing, and there's kind of a pallor of gloom or something over that. What if this happens, or what if that happens, or what if we get stuck with this, or what if they say that? But we're forgetting that we have a 30-day walk away from the deal. I mean, what could possibly happen if we were in it for a 3, 4, 6 year lease or contract? That'd be different. But if we find that things are not going as we were told, we just walk away after 30 days. I mean, it couldn't be any more of a sweetheart deal. The final thing is $261,000 savings. I mean, if council was to turn down this contract in the final analysis, if I was running in the November 7th election, I'd have a pretty hard time explaining to the taxpayers on the doorstep why we walked away from a program that provided us $261,000. My final deal is that we had 13 car dealers in here, probably last spring, I don't know, June.
Last June.
Last June. And we had 13 and we had good conversation with them. But then, and all of a sudden you realize that, yeah, there's 13 here and they're all great people. They're good business people. They're well respected within the community. But we only deal with 3 of them. Summerside, Chrysler, Dodge. That can't be a political thing to us. The gentleman that owns the dealership up there lives in Summerside. He's not even going to vote in the city election. You have Fairall Ford. They weren't dealing with us. They never answered a tender up until recently when they got the lion's share. And the Reliable Motors here in Charlottetown, those people live in my ward, and they have a very nice dealership out there on John Yo Boulevard, is it, or whatever? Yeah.
John Yo Drive.
Anyway,
Montpec
I
Road.
think it's a good deal. I think if worse came to worse, we could walk away after 30 days, and that's the safety net. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Rivard, Councillor Yankoff.
Thank you, Your Worship. It started off with one question. Now I have probably before. Firstly, just to comment one of Councillor Duffy's comments, just around the comparison of turning it over 2 years versus 12. Listen, you're comparing apples and oranges in that situation, because we're simply saying if we were to do the same program ourselves or through the dealership, it'd be 2 year. Right, so again, it's not about driving it till it's 12 years old and paying a clunker. I agree, that's not cost effective. I do believe getting rid of vehicles and turning them over quickly is the right thing, but we got to compare the two things together. Depreciation on Councillor Cody's comments. So I just looked quickly online, and I'm not turning this way because it's really uncomfortable. It's facing this way, so don't. So depreciation, I guess it's 10% when you drive the vehicle off the lot. It's kind of the normal number they use. Just did a research on the internet, seems to be the standard. It says 10 to 20% after the first year, and then 25% every year after seems to be a standard. So I guess my question is to you guys, and if I don't know if you know this, but how does Enterprise differ on depreciation than that of us doing the fleet management? Like, do they get better depreciation rates than we do, or are these pretty standard rates amongst any vehicle that leaves the parking lot?
I guess what I could say to that, there are standards within accounting for depreciation, but there's nothing that sets or says depreciation within a vehicle contract, a lease, or anything has to be a particular number.
Okay, so
I think what Enterprise is trying to do with the depreciation rates that they use in the lease is trying to approximate where their equity is, or where the value of the vehicle is when it resells. So I think they're maybe a little more conservative on what, as compared to what you would use for an accounting depreciation. Normally, accounting depreciation on the vehicle is 15% first year, 30% every year after, because you take the half-year rule first year, so you only take half the year. So I think they may be a little more conservative based on the lease contract and the expected turnover of the vehicle. So they are trying, I guess, to keep the book value of the vehicle similar to what the market value would be on resale.
okay, no, I appreciate that. Thank you. So again, keeping the accounting piece aside, if we were to manage that in-house, the depreciation would, if we knew when to flip the vehicle, would be same. Because they're Enterprise really not offering any special depreciation.
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Sorry, I'll move on because I got two questions that I know other people want to speak. The government fleet incentive, or the initiative, sorry, that we see in Appendix B on that chart, $5,000. Is that $5,000 per vehicle for every vehicle that we purchase? So we've purchased 18 vehicles, and we've actually, so that's $90,000 that we're getting back in our pocket.
We didn't pay upfront.
What's that?
We didn't pay upfront. That's available to any government agency that's buying.
On every vehicle, is there a term on this? Is it?
It fluctuates year to year.
Okay, so next year, it could be nothing. We don't know.
Could be gone.
Okay, perfect. Okay, no, that's good. And the last thing I want to mention, Your Worship, sorry, is we talked about what the cost, I think Councillor Cody asked this question, that we're paying fleet management Enterprise, and we said it was $10 per month per vehicle per, what's the 2% markup by Enterprise on a Ford invoice cost? That's $1,000, is that, I'm assuming that's cost.
That's the markup
Yep, yep.
They're right up front, they said right up front, 2% is what they charge on that vehicle for them to acquire it. And then they go.
That is the $10. Okay, so that's the two pieces.
The dealership could set theirs at a percentage or a dollar value if they so choose.
Sure, okay. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Nancy, just when they're speaking, when they're responding, could you just make sure the mic's on? Thank you. Or Steve, just because it's live stream. Councillor Yankoff?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to answer Councillor Ramsey's question, we actually have 3,573 municipalities in Canada, and I don't know how many are using it, fleet management, but it's a small amount. So that was just a piece of trivia, because I know you had been asking. The only other question I have is, if the city operates with this fleet management contract, do our 61 vehicles include our police vehicles and our fire vehicles? Why? Just out of curiosity.
Enterprise does not offer those types of vehicles at this point in
Okay.
time. They're specialized vehicles.
So then we're still operating and looking after some of our fleet within the city of Charlottetown.
A very small component of it, yes.
What about the water and sewer vehicles?
Yes, they
Their
are
fleet, okay.
included, yes.
Okay, and then I just had one other comment, and I know it will be addressed when you address all these questions at finance, but one of the things that you had outlined in your report was item number 5, where you talked about enterprises charges a fleet seller's fee of $4.95 to dispose of any leased vehicle, whereas the auctioneer charges a 5% for the selling price. The flat fee charged by enterprise results in the city reinvesting into the new acquisition. But according to the Automobile Association, they're telling us that no seller's fee will take place when you're trading in and selling your vehicles to the local dealers. So hopefully we can get that clarified. You don't have to answer that now. That can be something that you can do when you go back to finance. Sure.
So right now, when we send our vehicles to auction, there's that 5% is what they take from our disposal price. So that's a public option. You're getting, it's the fairest way to dispose of a public asset is to send it to a public auction versus picking a dealership and saying, you sell this truck for us, and then they get a percentage of the profits and we get a percentage of the profits. This is a more, in my view, a more open and transparent process. It's hard to estimate what that seller's cost is the way we currently do it, because you don't really know what you're going to end up with when you unload the vehicle. Where this way we know it doesn't matter what year, it's the $4.95 disposable fee, and you get access to that market.
Sorry, I'm just
Steve, go
adding
ahead.
that there. I guess when I look at that, the disposal fee is a cost of reselling that vehicle to enterprise. Whereas when you trade in with a dealership, they're incorporating their pricing and their margin and their markup into that trade-in value. So they're only giving you back enough so that they make the expected return on their investment that they plan to. So it's not a separate fee as such, based on the selling price, but it's built into their trade-in value they're willing to offer you. Okay?
Councillor Verd, do you have a follow-up? And then Councillor Bernard.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do have a follow-up. Just, I was looking at the spreadsheet on the next page after the appendix, Appendix C, and it shows a 10-year plan. Now, I guess I'm going to go back to my question with the government fleet incentive. So we talk about a $5,000 fleet incentive right now, which is great, and we said it can fluctuate. So I'm assuming that the assumption here on the next page in Appendix C is using the same government fleet incentive of $5,000 throughout the 10 years. So if it does fluctuate, because we replaced 18 vehicles, $5,000 rebate, which is $90,000. If we're looking at aiming at, let's say, 63 vehicles, but let's say the program changes, we still have 45 vehicles. And if we don't get that $5,000, that's $225,000 of unrecognized savings that are showing up in those numbers. Is that correct? If, right, okay, so, okay. Yeah, no, right, over the
full span of this analysis, yes.
yes, okay.
But I will, I guess I will say in that the effect that it would have on this particular analysis, if we were to lose that government incentive up front, is that our lease costs would be a little bit higher up front. So when you're looking at your leasing costs here, they would increase slightly, which is going to reduce your cost savings for the year in each particular year. But that's the effect it would have on this particular analysis.
Right, and that's what I'm alluding to. So again, if we look at one of the years, for instance, let's go to, I don't know, 2022, and we're showing a savings of what? 190,000?
Yes.
Am I reading the right line? Right, so if we were to purchase, how many vehicles is that being purchased in 2022?
17. it looks
17.
like, yes.
Okay, so 17. So we could, if they were, I'm just saying, if they were to reduce that program or eliminate that 50 or the $5,000, that savings would no longer be 190. The savings would be closer to 100. If the $5,000 was gone, because we'd have to recognize that as a.
Not necessarily, because you have to work in your lease term to that. Because we're not paying for the full cost of these vehicles when we buy them. We're paying a lease cost for a 2.5 year period. Then we're turning them over and realizing our equity. So you're only looking at a 2.5 year lease term, a 2.5 year depreciation period. So the value of these vehicles don't go to zero when we get rid of them.
No, and I understand that. So if we were to flip these vehicles after 2.5 years,
Yes.
do we recognize the $5,000 rebate? Let's assume the program's still in place on the next purchase as well.
That would be realized through the return in the equity when we resell the vehicle.
Okay, so we resell, but we buy new,
Yes.
or lease a new one again every 2.5 years. Do we recognize that $5,000 on second, third, fourth time around over 10
If the
years?
incentive is still available on the initial acquisition of that vehicle, then yes.
Okay,
But if it's not, then no.
okay, thank you.
Councilor Bernard.
Thank you, Your Worship. Kind of forget where I was. Anyway, I did have a question, and it goes to what Councilor Rivera brought up about depreciation. And I'm assuming that when there's depreciation on the vehicle, so when the example that Councilor Rivera gave, when I buy a vehicle and I roll it off the lot and I lose 10% or 20%, but that would also be based on what you're paying for the vehicle. So if he paid $10,000 to $15,000 more than what you're paying for that vehicle, then obviously our depreciation, at the end of the day, the dollar value is not going to be dropping as much as it would for a client to drive off a lot. Because this vehicle here that we're getting for $53,000, I'm assuming that when a client like Terry Bernard walks in, I'm probably going to pay $60,000 or $65,000 for that vehicle.
And
So
again,
in other words, the same vehicle, I'm paying this much, government's paying this much. So as they depreciate, you're not going to notice it as much on the government vehicle as you would on the vehicle that I buy.
no, I would agree with you there. If you were an individual going in,
That's right.
same individual buying one at a higher price, even though your depreciation's a little more significant dollar-wise, proportionately in comparison to the cost of the vehicle, it's not.
Right.
They're very comparable.
Yeah.
So
And I think the other point I wanted to make was, and you just alluded to it was, and I don't know if everybody is realizing it, but we're not paying full price, but we get the equity. So when you turn around and sell it in the 2.5 year mark, by the example of this first page, we're receiving money back. That's the money that we're making because we've been under their advisement of when to sell. This is the best time to sell it. So the city receives a check. So using Appendix B, where the vehicle was $53,000 minus the fleet incentive, minus the cost of government fleet discount, the subtotal was $49,800, and then you had the Ford markup, which they get guaranteed to make their money. The total capitalized cost at $50,322. So the book value in 12 months with the depreciation is $41,000. The disposal fee, and then you sell it for $45,900, and there's a check to the city for $4,640, which that goes towards, we can put it towards purchasing of the next set of vehicles that are coming in. Yeah. So, you know, at the end of the day, when I look at the next Appendix C, and you see $235,000 savings in year one, we know we're at the $261 now. We know that because we get the vehicles ordered and we got the invoice. So year two is $190. So this continues to go down until you get the total of $1.5 million savings. So there's savings in this every year. I've never come across anything in government, in the city government, that all of management had been in favor of and all of management has been recommending, and yet some councils still want to question it. And this is very clear. The paperwork's very clear. It just seems like some people have their mind made up that they don't want it to go to a fleet management system. And it is very clear in these documents, and it always has been clear, that this is saving taxpayers money, and it's not a little bit of money, it's significant money. And for the payments that we have and the operational costs that we have and we will see in the future, it's pretty ridiculous if we want to, because it sounds to me like we're looking for reasons that we can say no to this. But it's pretty airtight.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you, Your Worship.
But again, Councilor Bernard, again, we're in a democratic system here, and we're the elected officials, and we're getting feedback from different parts of the wards, the areas that we represent. That's what we bring to this chamber, and then of course the bureaucracy is trying to provide a plan for us to go forward. But I did ask this question, Steve, to our chief engineer at our last meeting. Have we received the delivery of the 17 or 19 vehicles?
Not yet, no.
What's that?
Not yet, no.
So if these vehicles were purchased through a local dealer, I know in the contract or in past contracts, there would be a late fee. Is there a late fee for Enterprise?
These are purchased through Farrell Ford. Farrell
Yeah,
Ford.
no, but they're coming from Enterprise Fleet Management, correct? Like who?
No.
Okay, but
Ford Canada.
right.
Delivered to Farrell Ford.
So
Peters Road.
so there's no late fee at all? Like I know in past purchases, if we purchased from Reliable or Summerside Chrysler, if they did not meet a certain day, there would be $100 fine per day. So there's no penalties in this tender?
No, there is not, but I think the distinction.
Can you turn on your mic?
It is on. I think the distinction we need to make here is that these are factory orders, where others are off the lot. So there is a difference between the market you're sourcing these from.
Right, but the point is, and I've been involved in this kind of a situation with our own business, of which now is a blind trust, is that we would be fined per day. And it didn't matter if it was local or it was a corporation, national or international corporation. So that's a disadvantage to our local dealers. Do they have an office here in Charlottetown? Enterprise Fleet Management? No.
Not that I'm aware of.
So they don't pay property taxes. They don't have a local office. And they don't pay penalty fees because of the arrangement that they're in. And the process that was used for this, go ahead.
Just in terms of the penalty fees, like right now when we submit, like for example, we just purchased a bucket truck. We didn't attach penalty fees because the market right now, I mean, all you gotta do is drive around Charlottetown and look at the car lots. There are none.
Yeah.
So a lot of our tenders, we've removed that from them because it's not fair to the businesses.
Yeah, but it's always been part of the tender process. That's what I'm saying. The late fees.
It all depends on the market. So
Yeah.
if there's something going on delivery wise, maybe you're building a building and it's steel, or whether you're ordering a
Yeah.
truck, it depends on the market whether it ends up in the
Yeah,
tender.
but again, Steve, my concern is that we've penalized our past vendors because they couldn't meet the time or the deadlines required in the tender.
But it's deadlines that they set. So when they submit the tender,
Right.
they say we're going to deliver on this date.
Right.
Where there's no guarantee of delivery date.
Yeah, so again, to me, that is difficult to understand because our local dealerships are constrained by rules in the tender process where they did get fined in the past. And if it does go back to this point, it could mean that also.
But if we implemented a fine on these, I feel like the dealership would probably end up absorbing that cost because
Yeah.
factory's coming to Faro.
I'm just passing on these questions that were asked by us. Councillor Vard.
See, there you go, making points, and then I have other questions. So, thank you, Your Worship. So, I know they're bought from the manufacturer, get that, built the manufacturer, get the better price, but we have no guarantee on delivery date. Do we know if these even started being built yet? And if we don't have any, if we have no guarantee on delivery date, then how can we project year to year if we don't know if what we bought in one year is even going to be built in that year.
I think it's reasonable that given the situation we're in with the supply chain of everything, nobody guarantees anything. When we get quotes now, they're good for 7 days, 10 days, 12 days. Before you might get 60 days, 6 months. I think that the car market right now is kind of in the same boat.
But I'm just going to throw an assumption out there. So let's assume that in 2 years we try to flip a car or a truck, and we flip it, we sell it, but there's no guarantee on when the next one's going to be built. So we could be forced to hold on to the vehicle past that golden date of 2.5 years because we have no guarantee that vehicle is going to be built, and we don't know if the times are going to change too much more. At what point does the manufacturers catch up to the post-COVID?
It's a $64,000 question. Yeah, it's a good point. Okay, so Donna, we do have this has to go to the Standing Committee for Finance and Properties, correct? That's the process.
Correct, Your Worship.
Your Worship, just one more question. Do we know the vehicles that we have on order now, do we know approximately when they may be coming in?
Yeah, last we checked, the end of August.
Next month? Oh, then, okay. I would think that it's hard for local dealers to get inventory now too. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure whether it makes a big difference because we're saying it's enterprise fleet management can't get us the fleet, but the local can. I think these are going through local, so I don't think there's any discrepancy there.
So Your Worship,
It's okay. Go ahead.
So the dealerships do receive their vehicles prior to the enterprises. What I'm told by the dealerships themselves, they actually do to fill their parking lot prior to the manufacturers filling, I guess, the obligations of these other orders. That's my understanding. Is that
but I think you're comparing it to lease companies. They'll fill that before they fill a leasing company, like Avis or any of the leasing companies. I think you're comparing it to that.
Okay. We can lead this to finance, okay? Okay, Donna?
Can you just remind us when the finance committee meeting will be so that perhaps like someone who I wouldn't get notification, but I may want to just listen in when my brain's fresh and I might be able to follow.
Donna, could we make sure that the invitation sent out to all of council? And could you also forward Lisa Doyle McBain's email?
I've done that while I was sitting here.
You're good, Donna. You're good. Okay, Steve, and Nancy, and the chief engineer, thank you very much. Are you going to stay a little longer, chief? Okay. You're going, Worship.
So just to confirm, so you guys, the management team was recommending this?
Yes, it is. It's in the report.
Okay, thanks.
Councilor Trio.
Yeah, can you tell me why you didn't recognize me to speak for the past hour? You made allegations about me, as I interpret it, disrespecting staff. Nothing could be further from the truth, and I resent the fact that you're laying this superficial guilt trip on me. I spoke at the beginning of the meeting, and I talked about wanting the industry to be involved, and that was the premise of the information I was trying to bring forward. I passed an email on to all members of council over the weekend, and then you laid some guilt trip on me, which I totally resent. It had nothing to do with staff. It's questioning the process. It's questioning the information. And, an hour later, and you still didn't recognize me.
Yeah.
Okay. You know what? That's not going to happen again.
Oh, okay. You've made your point known, and as I said before, my interpretation of your message was not kind to the staff or to this council.
Do you know what? That's your interpretation.
That
Very
is.
subjective, and I heard all kinds of
Can we move
discussions
on?
here
This is something
today.
that can be behind closed doors. Can we move on?
Right? I heard all kinds of discussions here today, but for some reason, you're very selective on who you try to undermine.
Yeah. Again, Councilor Twill, we're going to move on because I want to stay positive and respectful to the process. And now we're going to the next item on the agenda. Donna, do you wish to?
That's 1 hour, Your Worship. I never got to speak.
Could you
1
wish,
hour.
Donna, Councilor Twill, could you please allow our interim CAO speak to the next issue? Thank you.
Your worship, my report is in your package. Give you the highlights over the past few weeks since I started here. One of the first directions that I received from the mayor and council was that you wanted to take a look at our processes and how we did our business within City Hall to make sure that our bylaws and our policies were in compliance with the MGA and with other legislation and with acceptable accounting practices. Developing a plan took a little bit of time and effort, and it's not complete yet, but I think we're at a point where I wanted to come and make the report to you. I worked with a number of senior members of the accounting industry in coming up with this plan. Basically, what it is that it's a two-part plan. The Michelle Burge and Colin Juncker, who is, as you all know, is a former former auditor general of PEI, would work with me to review all of those allegations that were put out in the public, the ones that we've all heard about, and what we would do, I'm saying the auditors are like me, they're staff on this part of the project. We would go through the files, we would look at everything, we would look at the policies, and we would come up with a list and say, well, there's a couple of things that I know have been spoken in public and written in public, that work has been done, it's been completed, so it would go over here. And this other group, we would say, we don't see anything wrong here, but this other group, we would say, yes, we think that there are issues here, or there are policies that should be updated, there are bylaws that should be changed. And we would put timelines on that, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. Part two is that we would look for an external consultant. Now, I've talked to 3. I've got one person who is thinking about it, and I've got to call into the 4th person. That external staff person, again, a senior member of the accounting profession, who the community would recognize as being unbiased, not connected to the city, not involved with anyone at the city, would almost audit the work done by Michelle Burge, Colin Juncker, and myself, and finance staff as well. And not just look at it and say, well, that was a good plan, or that wasn't a good plan, but it's 30. You said you were going to have it done in 30 days. Well, now it's 35 days. What's going on? Why is it not being done? What's your plan to move this along? I'm hoping I was hoping that I would have a person today to be able to say to you who the external consultant. I don't have one hired yet, but I think it's important that we start. I think the plan is solid. I've got the blessing of a number of different people in the industry who feels that it's a good way to approach this issue, but I think we can start it. Start the research, start the work, but I wanted to come to you in advance, and then I will hopefully be back to you in very short time with the name of who the external consultant will be.
Any questions? No. Councillor Twill, he had his hand up.
Well, thank you, Donna, for the work that you've done thus far. I think when you first come on as a CAO, you and I had a chat. We talked about this process, and that, correct me if I'm wrong, but staff here at City Hall cannot be involved in the process when it comes to an external, some people call it review, some people call it investigation. As you know, the community wants a third-party, independent, truly independent review. You can call it investigation. I went a step further. because of things that I was reading in the newspaper. I even asked for a forensic audit because, one of the former deputy CAOs said there was violations on a number of occasions. I think he cited about 18. And be that as it may, I mean, we have our auditors. I'm not so sure, and somebody can help correct me, I'm not so sure that our auditors can be involved in the process if it's truly independent. So I'm looking for an exercise that's transparent from the perspective that it's truly independent. Then we can say that it's truly independent. They come in, they get all the information from staff, finance, public works, whatever the case may be. Any department that's required, and they go off and they do their research and their investigation. So that's the first point that I wanted to bring up, is the not only the appearance, but the reality that it's truly independent.
Okay. Donna, if I look at your report, thank you for the report, it says in the second paragraph, finally, an outside consultant. That would be a third party.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. I'm asking the CAO the question.
Yeah, excuse me.
I'm asking the CAO
I'm
the
chairing the
question.
meeting. So it's right there, second line in the second paragraph. Donna, can you follow up on that, please?
I appreciate what you're saying, Councillor Tweel, and I think that one of the reasons why I'm suggesting that myself and Mackisaac Juncker, Colin Juncker, and Michelle, we would be doing the legwork, but it would be the external consultant who would be, as you will see, who would be an accountant, retired or active, who would be engaged to review the plan and to confirm that it is viable and to monitor the same to ensure that we're doing what is expected in the timelines involved. And this person would also say to us, you're on the wrong track here. You're not going the right way. We got to turn this train around on this one or that one. That's what the plan would be. Because I appreciate what you're saying about the expectations in the community. I want this to be the most I want this so that we can put the community's fears to rest about all these allegations that have been made over the past few months.
Okay, I agree, and I agree with you.
Councillor Doyle, I had a speaker in line, Councillor McCabe, and we can come back to you, and then there's Councillor Bernard and Councillor Yanka. Okay, Councillor McCabe.
And Ron.
And Councillor Drawn.
Thank you, and thank you, Donna, for your report. It's exciting to see that we're actually proceeding with what all members of our council wanted, which was this governance review. So thank you for the work you've done so far to date. And I think, we all want to ensure that we're following the proper processes and procedures that are laid out for us. I also want to point out that accountants, lawyers, are professional people who have code of ethics and stuff to follow. So we want to ensure that, hopefully that they are going to be able to come in here and follow their code of ethics and do what we need to make sure that we get the information that we're setting out to determine for the public confidence and for everyone in here as well. So thank you.
Councillor Bernard.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to reiterate, Your Worship, I know Councillor Tweel said stuff he read in the paper or seen in the news, but I just want to don't forget, folks. These were allegations that were being made, and I know some of them have been looked in the past and turned out to be not quite what was the allegation was made. So, Don, I want to thank you for putting this all together. Hopefully. All the answers will come out from this, and that your timeline is anywhere from 90 days to 30 days to 90 days.
I'm not saying absolute 90 days, but that's what in my mind I want.
Yeah, but it is now that a lot of allegations have been made, and I've listened to the news and that also, and some of those I believe have been sensationalized. But anyway, this will this will be based on facts, and then the facts will come out. So I look forward to that, and obviously take the time you need to take. But at the end of the day, looking forward to seeing the results. So thank you for that, Donna.
Councillor Duran.
Thank you, Mayor Brown, and thank you, Donna, for moving ahead on this. As Councillor Tweel mentioned, you know, an independent person, as you stated in your report, that's going to be a big key for us. That they can come in here and do whatever they feel necessary to look into all these allegations and clean them all up, as we all want. There was a number of instances brought out, like in a whistleblower letter. They have to be reviewed. I'm sure you're well aware of that. You know, I'm looking forward to this, but they do have to be independent. I'm just not sure. Like you mentioned it, you know, the couple you have mentioned here to do the legwork. I just don't want anything missed. And that's why an independent person can come in and they can determine what should be looked at, what can be overlooked. You know, I know it's a hard thing to do, and it's going to be hard to do in a very tight timeline. But you know, I'll give you credit for bringing it up, and I appreciate that. I'm just hoping we can put this to rest after a full independent person can do a good, thorough investigation. And thank you very much, Doug.
Councillor Tweel and Councillor Yankoff. What's that? Oh, you want to wrap it up? Okay. Councillor Yankoff?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just really to reiterate what a few others have said, thank you, Donna, for doing what we all know needs to be done, and it's going to hopefully regain some confidence with our residents, as well as just determine, you know, fact versus story. And I think it's really important for the public to know, you know, what is fact and what is the story that was just told. And so again, thank you. Looking forward to it.
Councillor Ramsey.
Yes, and I'd like to thank you too, Donna, because as you know, everybody's been thrown underneath the bus over this, if you read some of the social media and that, and I am looking forward to sort of clearing the air and everything, because there's nothing worse than when your name and your family, like, is sort of dragged through the mud, so I'm really looking forward to it, and I thank you for spearheading this.
Okay. Deputy, no comments? You're all right? Okay, do you want to conclude there, Councillor Tweel?
Yeah, Donna, maybe you can help me with this in the spirit of independence. And I apologize if I don't get it right, but I have approached our city auditors, Michelle Burge and Colin Juncker, former Auditor General PEI, to review the allegations that have been made in the public forum, associated policies, practice, and legislation, and to make recommendations on the same. Help me with this, please. How can our auditors be involved in the process when they're our auditors? If we're bringing someone in from the outside, they're already primarily on the inside because they do our audits on an annual basis. So how is that truly independent when we're requesting to go outside and to have it not only appear to be independent, but actually independent? I'm having difficulties with that.
Councillor Tweel, that's what I call the legwork. So, for example, there are a couple of issues that were out there that you've already attended to, already resolved, put to bed, not an issue anymore. Accusation was made about property. Well, the property was sold, so that one was obviously be put to bed. But there are other allegations out there that are not. So what the auditors and I would do would develop recommendations and a plan and present it to the external consultant. The external consultant would look at our plan and say, what do you, that's, so that whole independency, we need the auditors to help me with getting the material ready. And then the external auditor would look at it in more, in the detail and say, you haven't done enough, you need to do more, and would be with us through the process, not just at the beginning, but through the process, where you come up with something, you say A, B, C, and then you'd say, well, what about D?
Okay, and just to follow up, as you know, we had two former deputy CAOs. Well, the information they presented, whether it was through the media or email correspondence here to City Hall, will all that information be looked at as well?
Most certainly, Councillor Twill, most certainly.
Okay.
Okay. And again, I'd like to go back to the comment made by Councillor McCabe. Lawyers, accountants, engineers have a code of ethics to follow, and they have to adhere to that code of ethics because that's what governs their institution. So I'm sure that that'll be respected in this whole process. Thank you for those comments, Councillor McCabe. Okay. Councillor Yankoff.
Thank you, Worship. Just to wrap things up, I just want to thank Donna for spearheading this process and really, looking forward to the outcomes, the deliverables that will come from this transparent process. So thank you.
Again, job well done, interim CAO. So, are we all good? It's 7:10, and we have a motion to move into a closed session as per section 119, subsection 1 of the MGA, subsection E, a matter still under consideration. Moved by Councillor Ramsey, second by Councillor McLeod. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Councillor Twill, you in favor of it? Okay. Councillor Drawn?
Yes.
Okay, 10-0. So
Motion to adjourn to get to the chicken? Okay, thank you. I don't know. I didn't put the chicken in the oven. Jeez. Oh, text.